Well, thank you for choosing Morning Live. Now, the Institute for Race Relations yesterday hosted a group discussion on land expropriation without compensation. Protection of property rights topped the list of concerns for the three economists who participated in the panel, given that there is still no clear framework of how the process will unfold. Now, the panel also focused on pitfalls pertaining to process, but there was still no solutions on how to address the country's status quo on land ownership differentials. Lumkile Mondi is a senior lecturer at Wits School of Economics and Business Science, and he was one of the economists on the panel. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So this is, of course, a very important subject, but let's start by focusing on the issue of property rights. When you go to the Institute of Race Relations website, it is there, it features very prominently this question about property rights. But how do we address this question in a meaningful way when the majority of South Africans do not have property or property rights for that matter?
Thanks for having me, Sakin. What's important for us is to implement our constitutional mandate. So our constitution speaks to South Africa belonging to all who live in it, but specifically talks to redress, which is contained in the equality clause. And one would have expected that any party that's governing will then implement by ensuring that we address some of the weaknesses inherited in the past. For example, land hunger, access to employment opportunities, because our constitution talks to a right to employment. So all those issues, in the absence of us moving forward and addressing them, we're going to have a contestation of those that lost the battle in the process that led to our compromise in 1994 and contesting that. So there is a lot of views coming across, both from the Institute of Race Relations, but also from other parties such as the FF, who are saying actually we were robbed in 1912. Therefore, we need to ensure that there's redress, and that redress includes taking the land back, even by force, without compensation. So we need the progressive within our society to understand that in deeply divided societies, we need a center that can drive a better vision, which is the National Development Plan, and that plan we implement accordingly so that we bring South Africans together, because if we're together, we can then address our problems and advance the gains that we've lost in the past 10 years, particularly redressing and giving opportunities to the youth and the majority of South Africans.
But what is driving the fear at the moment when it comes to property rights? Because the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, is very clear on people's rights.
The recent history, particularly of the past 10 years, where the state willfully went out of the way and ensured that institutions were weakened, whether it is National Prosecuting Authority, is the collapse of the most critical transport system for the poor, the commuter rail, PRASA, where it used to take 35 minutes from Naledi to Johannesburg. Now it can take anything up to four hours by train. So these issues of the inability of the state to effect its constitutional mandate, because people have misappropriated or have undermined the strength of the institution, leads not only to institutions like the IRR, but broader South African society to have a lack of trust and confidence in the state to effect its constitutional mandate, because everyone in the process is chopping. So the extent that we have lost over trillions of rands and we've only collected just a few billion requires a much more decisiveness in terms of the state and all its institutions to get back all the money which was stolen in the past 10 years. And over a process, the state shows its ability to how it can bring back the confidence that is so lacking, and is reflected by all the rating agencies that have downgraded but one.
So if I understand you correctly, the view that is being espoused here is that because of the malfeasance, the corruption and mismanagement that we've seen over the years in the state, there is therefore fear that there could be mismanagement and even anarchy in this process of dealing with the land question. Am I understanding you correctly?
Absolutely. It could end up to the very same black elite that was engaged in malfeasance. So therefore the poor I mean, in South Africa in the past 25 years, have not been given an opportunity to participate in the mainstream of the economy. So those fears mean that, if you cannot effect an effective transport for the poor, how can you give them back the land? So these issues are real issues. And until we show that we can deliver just on basic issues, on the broader macro issues such as the land, such as the national health system, people will believe that, even if they take away my pension, I can trust that government can do what's supposed to do and benefit not only me, but broad society. In that absence, people are going to mistrust, and therefore have a collapse of trust and belief that good policies are meant for malfeasance.
So, in the absence of good governance, how then do you allay those fears that this is something that needs to be done? It is going to happen one way or another, and the state, unfortunately, is the driver of this. So how do you allay those fears when there are, unfortunately, very few good examples of really good governance?
The first thing is going to be tomorrow when the Minister of Finance announces the budget. The key is that with an economy that's performing below 0.5%, that in the current financial year that we're in, or calendar year, it may even be worse than the past year. And therefore, spending is a huge issue. That how can you continue borrowing to spend? And you don't spend to invest on infrastructure, particularly on new schools, on redress around pit latrine toilets, lack of classroom, etc. If we don't show ourselves that we can do that as South Africa, then that lack of confidence and that lack of belief and the fraction that's in our society will deepen. So we're going to put in tomorrow from Minister Mboweni to show that South Africa can embark on social reforms that are credible, that can ensure that in the medium term, we've got a growth rebound from 0.5% to about 2% by 2022, with a possibility of going to about 3.5% by 2025. In the absence of that, South Africa is just managing a slow decline, which will continue for a long time in the absence of credible social reforms. And I expect Mr. Mboweni to announce those tomorrow.
Now, speaking about the economy and the lack of growth in the economy and just some of the views that were posited around that, is there a school of thought, a point of view that suggests that if the economy were performing well, there would be no need to have this question about redress as far as the land is concerned?
The redress is a constitutional mandate. The redress is not an overnight success or an overnight solution. It is a process. It's a generational process. So the most basic thing of redress is providing opportunities. So you've got very good school, you provide shelter for everyone, and at the back of economic growth, we're able to then create opportunities because at least the basics are covered. We can't even address the basics. So that's the challenge for South Africa, is that the growth that will have helped us is the growth that will ensure that at least at the basic, good school, good health system, shelter, and then the rest is easy for us to address. But without growth, we're unable even to do those. So therefore, that's why many of us argue that growth is a non-negotiable, because then it can allow us to have that excess revenue that enables us to slowly chip in around these pit latrines, around this lack of classroom, on the commuter rail system which is used by the poor. But, in the absence of it, it means the poor are affected more than us, the elite, because we've got choices. We can cut down here and there. Many of our people have got no choice at all. They rely on one person who's working if they're lucky, or on their social wage that we provide. So the key here is growth.
But is that a prerequisite for land redistribution?
So on the land side, on the health side, across many areas, you can never be able to advance without growth, because you can redistribute all resources. Remember that many people, when you give them resources, if they've got no way of ever having one, they destroy those resources. We've seen, particularly in certain areas where we try to provide property in terms of RDP housing, that individuals choose to monetize them because they prefer cash than shelter. So it's very complicated, to really have a very tight long-term stability in the absence of a growing economy. That's why when you're growing, you're creating employment opportunities. As you provide for shelter and other things, then it gets easier for people to know that I've got shelter now, there's job opportunities, so I can go and into labor market, work, and then improve my small RTP house for the better. In the absence of that, of jobs, is the temptation to monetize because cash can buy you other things.
But surely that should be people's right. We shouldn't strip them of that agency to make that choice.
That choice gets better when it's in a variety of choices. In this case, many people don't have a choice. So you get this property but got no job. How do you maintain? Remember, we have to maintain our properties. How do you maintain it in the absence of revenue flowing in? So it's easier to get rid of the problem with the view that at least with that income, I can use it for other things. So
but what does that mean?
What I do is to create bigger opportunities than just distribute. So the idea here is to provide basic services and provide opportunities. What you do without it, you've got much bigger choices. So those that choose to do nothing will at least have another choice that, you know what, if they're willing, they can go and sell labor power in a thriving, successful economy.
Are you suggesting that people wait until the economy takes a turn for the better before we deal with the land question?
I'm suggesting that the land question is a distraction. The land question is a distraction because people will prefer being employed and making choices for themselves than a state which is unable to provide a decent toilet, to provide classroom, to provide an efficient and effective transport, and create opportunities for them to go and sell labor power. So,
but when it comes to
so in that debate, I would rather have these than be caught up in land when there's no opportunity for, in the first place, if I get that land, what do I do it in the absence of cash to try and, if I'm a farmer, to try and invest in the agricultural sector. So it brings a lot of issues.
But isn't economic security tied into land security? If people have land, could they not use that to maybe use as collateral, to bargain, even sell if they so wish to start something else? Why should we deprive people of owning land simply because they may not have the money to work the land, to till the land? Couldn't they perhaps come up with other means?
What I'm saying to you is that in a normal society where the issue of the day is land hunger, society has to address that land hunger. In a society whereby there's been historical dehumanization of individuals, where 25 years down the line, there's been no change for many South Africans, where the government continues to fail people on basic services, and suddenly land becomes a bigger issue. There's something wrong with that society.
But land is not a 25-year-old question. People have been dispossessed of the land since time immemorial. Land is a question of justice for South African people. Isn't that important?
That's very important. That is why the drafters for wonderful constitutions put that Section 25 clause. The clause being that if we believe that there are communities in our society that are marginalized because of the land hunger, that the state can go ahead and nationalize. And South Africans will support that because there is no issue about marginalization of our people and what to do about it. Our courts will support that. There's been no test case. What you've had is a series of land redistribution claims based on research where the claimants have been undermined. A process has taken longer, where the opportunity of a better life has been postponed, not because of land hunger, because of a state that's not capable to effect its constitutional mandate, where there's been a distraction in the 25 years around what was the core focus of our national social contract embedded in our constitution, including the right to employment, which has never been debated because those that are working are prepared to secure their position without looking for those outside the labor market.
Surely the state hasn't covered itself in glory in this process, that I concede. However, the problem is not only with the state, the problem is also with those in whose hands the land currently rests. This is why the willing buyer, willing seller process failed, not only because of the state, but because of the other actors as well. We know people have inflated the prices of the land. We know that people have bonded the land again, thereby creating other sort of technicalities to make this process difficult. So it's not just the state that has been at fault here. The landowners themselves have also contributed to this problem. So what is the solution? How do we move forward? But we cannot say that people should not be given land because the economy is not growing. What is the solution beyond that particular caveat?
In a country whereby we have got a constitution, as I've been arguing this morning, we expect that the state shows its hand by using its own asset first, by showing people that, you know what, we can distribute our land, and we've done that very well in effecting our constitutional mandate. However, there are parcels of land owned by trust where, because we cannot pierce the veil of trust, that we need to pass laws to force those trusts to do the same. The state on its land hasn't done much. So this is a smokescreen. It's a smokescreen for a state that's failing its own people. And for people who want political power because they can see that the state is failing, therefore we're all focused our energy on land. When the bigger issue is about an economy that's growing, that is dynamic, that creates opportunities for our people. That
includes the land question, though.
It includes the land question, it includes the health system, it includes the education. It's a broader issue. Why are we debating the land when we don't
Why shouldn't we debate the land? Why should we only debate NHI? Why should we only debate the education problem? We have to debate the land question.
The land question is a smokescreen for a collapsing regime.
But why? Why don't you say NHI is a smokescreen?
It's a smokescreen because the majority of our politicians in parliament never use those resources. If they use those resources, if they use the public resources, if they use both education,
So you're saying universal healthcare, universal quality healthcare for all South Africans is a smokescreen?
I'm saying to you that the debates in South Africa are very unfortunate. Are very unfortunate in the sense that you've got a declining tax base, you've got a failing state, you've got failing public sector institution, whether it's transport, etc. You've got falling infrastructure. The key
but
for
does
us,
that delegitimize the fact that land redress has to happen, the fact that all South Africans are actually deserving of quality healthcare? Does that delegitimize the fact that every South African actually deserves quality education? Surely all of those questions still matter. And unfortunately, I can't even get your response because your mic has fallen off as we were speaking there.
This is a hot debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
But you know what? These are the questions that we will continue to debate. And thank you so much to Lumkile Mondi, who is one of the economists that participated in a panel discussion yesterday at the Institute of Race Relations on land expropriation of land without compensation, amongst other things. That brings us up to news time.